Hey,
Hello.
there she is. Sorry about that. I've got a stool behind me. I realize that it makes me look taller than I want to be. So I'm sitting on a Pilates ball now to make things a little easier. Is this okay? Are we clear?
No, that's great.
Excellent.
That's great.
Are we on live now or do we have a few moments?
Oh, we're good. So the uncut version goes onto my YouTube and then I edit it for the podcast.
Got it. So we're on YouTube now. Got it.
We will be. Yeah. This will be YouTube. Yeah.
Okay.
We're not live anywhere, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Got it. So I'm clear. Good. Excellent.
Yeah. I have to say, look, I know in our meeting that we were just in, you were mentioning that you're working on saying no to a lot of things. And so I appreciate you being here. And I feel very honored that I'm one of the event, I don't want to say opportunity. I would say one of the conversations you said yes to.
Of course. Yeah. You're an easy yes to say to in a good way, right? Yes, in a good way. So yeah, absolutely. And any opportunity to connect deep in this format, inhale, exhale with somebody who's like-minded is always a good thing. So absolutely.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to our conversation and learning more about your story. I've been reading up on you and your history and your journey just in business. So I'm looking forward to the journey in life that you've been taking. And one of the things that I really hope people, of course, on the YouTube channel, when they see this, will get from this is one of the things we tend to have an issue with in this space is the level that people work in. Right.
What does that mean exactly?
Meaning, like, for example, on your website, it's talking about you're working with Fortune 500 companies and, working on these teams around Tony Robbins and all of these people with these, what we consider big names. And we tend to put people in a space that they're not people, right? They don't go through what we go through. As maybe I'm just getting started in a business, or I'm in that 5-figure wanting to hit 6, but I'm still struggling with things. And people struggle to see someone who has done all the amazing things that you've done in your business, and they take away that humanity piece. And so it's having people share their stories and what they've gone through and really humanize people so people can feel more aligned and feel connected, and is really important to me because we can look at someone, for example, like Tony Robbins and go, not relatable. People will say you can do anything, but when you see it, it's not relatable because we haven't seen the last 40 years of his life.
Right. Exactly.
We don't see, we hear the first story of what he went through to start this business. Yet we don't see all the behind the scene things that he's gone through, that he's had to continue to overcome to build this business. Exactly. And people make it seem like it's this, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. Once I get there, then everything will be easy and everything will be fine. When honestly, I feel like sometimes success, visibility, increased revenue, all of those things, they all bring their own challenges, their own struggles, their own things. And so being able to have people here that can share, been there, done that. And I'm still a person. I still have a wife. I still have kids. I still have family. I still have everyday things. And you guys can share that perspective. Means so much because people need to understand. I think it's so important for people to understand that it's anybody. Anybody can do anything they want to do. They just have to believe in themselves enough and stop putting so much value on other people's lack of belief in them.
And stop comparing, basically. That's a big part of it as well. So I'm all about execution. One thing I appreciate with my clients, people I connect with, is that what I often get feedback is that there's often this human element in terms of that connection, what I offer. And part of that I realize is me because I often go first as far as being authentic, vulnerable, right? And it's just something I've learned how to do over the years, being like just go first, to share first. And that often builds trust, kind of sharing the journey, the challenges and so forth, because, it hasn't often been perfect. I'm a work in progress, and I'm certainly what I put out there is useful in the sense that there's an expectation now in terms of who I am. I believe we rise in the expectation, how we show up. We rise that way as an opportunity. It's part of what I've built as well. Also, just creating expectations for people are expected to be better, each day. And I'll talk about that too, also in the podcast as well.
Yeah.
I've had my own heart condition. My mom had a heart transplant. I've gone through some health crises over the years, and I'd say right now I'm better. And that's the most important thing. That's the message I can convey to people. Just being better,
Yeah. I'm looking forward to getting into that. So awesome. Well, why don't we get started?
Sure. Can you give me one moment? I just see something behind me that's a little distracting, so I want to move it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll be right there.
Yeah, whatever you need.
20 seconds.
So what I will say while you're doing that is our backgrounds a lot of times don't bother viewers. They distract us so much.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
I completely had to redo my background. I was talking with someone one day, and she goes, that's so distracting. And I said, but I like having my books behind me. And she goes, well, not like that.
Ah.
And I was like, that's a good point. They were just a big pile, and there was no order to them. And so I redid my background. And now when I use a virtual background, the only difference is you don't see my microphone, but my virtual background is still what you see.
It's your same background. I love it. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I took a screenshot of it, but I'm going to use this. Which is funny because then my chair will be positioned different. And so if I get up or I move, like it'll look weird because my chair will be a little different or bigger with the background. My chair will appear bigger than it really is.
I think on my model, I actually have a green screen near me that I just haven't put it up yet. Behind me that basically pulls down, but I bought it a year ago. I just haven't put it up yet. So
yeah, I don't use a green screen, but I was like, I like the idea of having the background. And I put the money into upgrading my computer. My oldest son built it for me originally. And so my youngest son will update it for me.
Nice.
And so we updated something that needed to be updated. It was not inexpensive by any means, but I updated it and I don't need a green screen.
Love it. So it's got the processing power. Amazing.
Yeah. And so I was like, I never know what my background is going to look like, or if someone's going to be sitting in my office, or my kids are in and out, my husband, whatever. So I was like, I'll just use this and I'll turn it on when I need to. The only different is this disappears.
Got it. Well, I love that your kids are kind of wise enough. They can help you with the text. That's
good. Yeah. Yeah. Our youngest is 20, getting ready to turn 21.
So you started early, I imagine, right?
19.
Got it. Yeah, because you're younger than me. I know that. I can tell.
Yeah, our oldest is 28. So
wow, got it. That's awesome. What a blessing.
Yeah.
You just have just the two?
We have 5.
5 kids. Wow, incredible.
Yeah, 28, 27, 26, 21, and 20.
Wow. What a blessing. How many boys and how many girls?
3 boys, 2 girls.
Okay. Got it. That's great.
Yeah.
I have a 4-year-old upstairs with her nanny, and he's just the cutest thing, but it's a precious age. I was 44 when he was born. So it goes by very quickly. I was a lot more immature when I was, when you start having, because I was very immature. At least I think I was. I wasn't ready at that point.
Yeah, I wasn't either. I don't know that I still am. I still don't know that I'm ready to be a parent. It's the things when you become a parent, there's things that are very different. Yeah. When you don't have the people around you that are inner growth focused, life is very different. But as I've grown and got into self-discovery and all of that, I realized there was a lot that I could have done differently and wish I could have done differently and gone back and changed. Then someone asked me one day what I regret. And I said, I don't know that I regret anything or would want to change anything, because that doesn't mean that things would actually have turned out better.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't mean that anything would have been, maybe they just would have had a different kind of trauma for me. Trauma.
I love that. I mean, I think things happen for a reason, and having both my kids have an enormous gift in closing out the past in a lot of ways. And it just kind of has to do with the whole nature of, so my son's 4 years old, born in 2018. What I'm present to is to have the son I have now. Every event before 2018 had to happen in the order that it happened for him to be who he is as a child, right? The perfect. It could be, it could be a different, it could be a girl. It could be born with something. We might not even have a child. Same with my daughter too, as well. Also, she was born in 2015, and every event prior to her birth had to have happened in that order for her to be as perfect as she is, the miracle she is. So it's given me the opportunity to just embrace all of it, embrace the whole journey, because I just wouldn't have who I have in my life if it weren't for that. So
isn't it amazing how that works?
Yes.
I know Gary Vee talks about often, like it's one in a, I don't remember the statistic, but it's like 1 in a so many billion chance that you would actually be born you.
Yeah.
So you are more likely to get hit by lightning or, all these other things that won't happen to most of us. And so many of us just see it as no big deal. And we don't realize how precious. I know it took me a long time to realize how precious the things that have happened were.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to jump in and we'll get started.
Yes, absolutely. And how much, this is going to 4:00 Eastern, right? It's another 25 minutes or how long, just so I know.
We've been out from when we start, so about 4:10 Eastern.
Perfect. Amazing. That's awesome. I have nothing else in my space, so I'm all yours. Let's do it.
Unless you're like Buzz and we spend 2 hours on here. Me and Riley were on here for 2 hours, so
Wow. Okay, got it.
Unfortunately, if there's nothing afterwards pressing, sometimes our conversations can really go for a while.
Let me message my coach. I have a project manager coach, and I'm going to ask him if we can meet at 4:30. He and I can meet at 4:30. That'd be great. And that would be great. I'm just WhatsApping right now on the computer.
You're good. I love this because on YouTube, what I really like them to see is this isn't as hard as they make it out to be, and swing, shift, and adjust. And it's okay. We don't have to. This is a good lesson for the previous me. Things don't have to be so rigid. Like it is okay. The world will not come to an end if something shifts.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and how many viewers do you get?
Say that again.
How many viewers do you get for these shows?
How many of these do I have?
How many viewers do you get on average? How many do you
It's a new podcast. So, I don't even know how to learn that yet.
Okay. Got it. Well, you're going to have a lot of fun. So it's great. Everything's a conversation. Everything's dialogue. So yeah, it's all great.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Some of the stuff will even get turned into shorts on all my platforms and Pinterest and YouTube and social and everything to help drive traffic. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this, like the guests that I'm attracting is really amazing. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how that grows this platform, as well as how it impacts their platforms, because some people are on these other platforms where there's millions and millions of people and they share this out like, hey, this is where I was at. And so it'll be really interesting to see, how it develops. And
I'm excited to share.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think people are always so worried that they don't know, I'm not big enough, I'm not well known enough. And I think we discount the ask. Like I want people on my podcast. I want them to share their story of overcoming. That's my focus for my guest episodes in 2023.
Amazing.
I haven't decided what 2024 is going to look like. But when I pick that topic for my guests, people who want to share are going to share. And I think we overcomplicate how we're going to find guests. and who we try to limit who we can and can't have as a guest because we limit ourselves based on whatever numbers or standards we put limitations on. So I really want this to show people that it really doesn't matter. Put the ask out there. People will connect you. Things will happen, and you just let it, and amazing things come out of it.
I mean, amazing.
Yeah,
I'm all for a conversation, particularly as it relates to progress and helping people. And everything's a conversation. And I think everything is legacy. So we put something out there, it's legacy. So it lands, that someone might be impacted by it. It's always a good thing. So whenever you're ready, I'm good to go for the next hour free.
Good. We're good to go. Welcome to today's episode of the Walking With You podcast. And you know what? I'm going to start over because I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name.
Yeah. Varghese, like
Varghese.
Varghese. Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Success circles.
Myself.
All good.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Welcome to today's episode of the Walking With You podcast. I'm your host, Dina Adams. And today I have an incredible guest, very humble. And Joseph Varghese is going to be sharing his story of overcoming with you. And I really hope that you will get this sense that I get from him, which is everything is about being able to grow yourself and others forward with love and kindness and compassion. So Joseph, thank you so much for being with us today.
Pleasure to be here, Dia. Grateful to be here.
I'd like for you to share who you are, what you do, and who you serve in your business, and then we'll jump into your story.
Absolutely, yes. I'm based in New York City. First of all, I'm a husband. I'm a father of two. I'm a little older. I started having family later in life, in my 40s. And my children are the best blessings to me, ultimate blessings to me. I'm an entrepreneur. I have been an entrepreneur for over 20 years now. I had to learn how to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know how to be an entrepreneur. I wasn't raised by entrepreneurs. My dad was an engineer. My mom was a nurse. They both came to this country, Canada, then the US, back in the 1960s and early 70s. And I consider myself that I won the lottery, really, like being born in the States, having two amazing parents. Certainly there were some struggles along the way. I'll get into some of that soon as it relates to health. But what I do these days is I cater to entrepreneurs. I help entrepreneurs get better each day. That 1% progress each day adds up a lot. And I help people really tap into being heard, being listened to, being connected, breaking out isolation. We all deserve to have connection. I really believe that everything we have, every dream we have is a conversation. And it's very useful to connect and engage and share that conversation, share our dreams, our mission in life in a way that forwards people's dreams and forwards each other.
I love that. There's this calmingness to your voice that every time I hear you talk, I'm like, I can just, dial it down a little and like, there's this people that you talk to and you're like, oh my gosh, okay, there's so much energy and you try to keep up with that. And when I talk with you and I'm in meetings with you and on calls with you, it's like, okay, there's this soothingness that comes out of your tone of voice that I just absolutely love, because sometimes it's challenging depending on our personalities, depending on what impacts us on the type of person we align with and how we show up. And you were mentioning earlier today in a call that we were on, you said, and as soon as I started to say it, I lost it. What was it that you mentioned? Oh, that in that call, you could be a little less professional, I guess. Yeah, a little more laid back.
Yes.
And I think it's so interesting how we choose how we show up differently based on the environment that we're in. And someone had told me one time, either you're influenced by the environment or the environment is influenced by you.
I love it.
And I was like, oh, so when you said that today, I was like, oh, that's something that I need to remember, because I adapt to everything around me. Right. And so I know different parts of my personality come out a little differently based on the guests that I have because of their energy and the way they do things. And And so I was really excited to have you on. Just, okay, I'm just myself, but he's just his self. We're just good. We don't have to worry about all that.
Well, I like keeping it light. And
Yeah.
that's an important thing as well, also, so we can be expressed and open. And I do believe we put ourselves in certain environments, and based on the people in those environments, they expect us to be better or a way we used to be in life. But 20 some years ago, I started an event company, and we threw fundraisers for different charities in New York City. At these events, I would have family and friends and college mates and other entrepreneurs. And I found I was a bit different with each person I would connect with based on how they saw me, how they knew me as a child, in college, in high school, in business. And it was just fascinating, like how the idea of that kind of, as you mentioned before, when we're in certain environments, we feel like very open and connected and so forth, and others we may not be, and how there might be an opportunity to really kind of shift our peer group in a way that we're invited, inspired to be better. And I'm all about being better each day. That's a big part of my life.
You talked about growing 1% every day. And I want to share an example of how that mindset for me has impacted me. Is I have a way I show up when it comes to family based on past trauma. The problem was I took that trauma, and then as I realized later that as our kids hit certain ages or there were certain milestones that would trigger things for me, I started acting that way with our kids. And I didn't realize it till it was so late in life. And it was only because adopting that thought process that I just want to be better today than I was yesterday, and just be better today than I was yesterday, and just keep doing my best to be my best every day, made me realize that I haven't always been that way. Because I think sometimes we lie to ourselves that we've always been that way, and it wasn't. It was something I just didn't do until much, much later. And I think it's such a powerful thought to adopt, is to be better, that 1% every day.
Yeah, I think it's simple way of looking at life. It's never perfect, but even if we're slightly better each day, each week, eventually that adds up, that compounds. And to your point regarding kids, it's easy to be a certain way. Part of, I'm all about generational impact, and just ensuring that my kids aren't repeating mistakes that perhaps I made or their grandparents made and so forth, that they have a fresh start. They have full options, full access to who they want to be in life. And of course, I'm there as a mentor, as a guide. But it's easy to bring a lot of like our stuff onto the table in a way that affects their behavior and just has them see life being different. And my mom had a heart transplant 26 years ago. When I was a kid, she had challenges. She'd faint a lot when I would come from school. And I believe in some way, some form, and I can talk about this in depth, is that generationally, of course, there's a genetic component of that, right? And somehow I had the same condition she had. And I was able to make choices in my 20s when I found out I had this condition called cardiomyopathy to reverse it. Basically make steps each day. And I'm often curious, is this true? Was it truly genetic, or was it by choice that this happened to myself at a young age, that I received that? Or as you mentioned before, sometimes the traumas we experience as children can affect us. And I do believe physiologically we can affect ourselves. They can affect ourselves as well also. There's some thoughts I've had over the years, because I no longer have a heart condition. I've erased it. I've basically done the work on my health to reverse it. But there are a number of other things I've reversed too over the years. Playing on that principle, 1% progress over time adds up quite a bit.
It does add up a lot. And so let's go back to that a bit, because this is a huge part of your story of overcoming. And I think it's so important for people to recognize that everyone goes through stuff. No one is immune. It doesn't matter what family you're born into, where you're born, any of that. Everyone's has something that they have to overcome at some point in life. And so would you talk to us a little bit about when you found out you have this condition, what it was for you that maybe that internal dialogue, or what happened that made you be like, okay, I don't want to end up like that. And so now I have to do this, and kind of walk us through what that was like for you.
Absolutely. So I was a senior in college, and I was taking an engineering. My dad was an engineer. I kind of followed his path, being an engineer too, as well. And my mom, she's in the hospital. She's basically there for 3 months, and they're working toward getting her a transplant. She's 6 years old at the time. And because she was fairly healthy, she was a candidate for this. And while she was waiting for this transplant, okay, they initially put a pacemaker in her, it failed. I was experiencing palpitations myself. And I would be in Hoboken, where I was living at the time as a college student, and I'd be feeling these strong sensations like I was having a heart attack, and I didn't know what was going on. And it just so happened that I was taking a medication that one of the side effects was that it would cause these palpitations to happen. And that was a blessing. It was really, truly a blessing, because her doctors at that point diagnosed her with the same condition she had. And I worked with her doctors for the next 7 years. My mom had a successful heart transplant. Most transplant patients live about 10 to 13 years. She's gone to 26 plus years, 27 years now. Really, really amazing. I guess I'm from a culture from South India where heart disease and cholesterol and, the body, based on where we come from, whatever it is, people suffer from heart disease. It's a big factor. My dad had a stroke soon after my mom had her transplant. Within a few years after that, he passed away in 2004. So I grew up with this. And at a young age, I made a decision that I would be healthy. I would make the healthy choices. So I went through life, you could say, kind of trying to be an athlete. Part of the reason, so fast forward, I mentioned to you before that she had a transplant and now had palpitations. Things started making a lot of sense around that point, because when I was in high school and college, I always had these fainting spells where every time I'd get up to talk to people, to have a conversation, to get in front of class, I would fall backwards. And people around me were like, what's going on with him? Why is he doing that? I was a bit embarrassed by it at the time in high school and college. But later on, it all made sense that the fainting spells I had in high school and college, those were experiences my mom had when I was younger, where she'd faint and she'd pass out and she's in hospital for days at a time. What it became very clear out of all of this, they put the pieces together. So I had the same heart condition she had. And, I made a commitment that I would shift it. When I was in high school and college, I learned how to be an athlete. I realized the more I ran, the more I moved my body, these fainting sensations would disappear, particularly because my body was in aerobic shape. My heart was in aerobic health, good aerobic health. So I've trained myself to be an athlete. So I'm grateful for that, because I really do feel that, getting health managed is a really key thing being an American. It's so important to get that managed. A lot of Americans are in poor health. At a young age, I made it a decision that I would be in good health, and it was out of more of a need. But fast forward to when she had a transplant and when I was diagnosed with that condition, I just took it on myself to, I don't want to be a victim around this. I'm going to make choices that'll give me more options, where in 40 years, hopefully I won't need a transplant, which what the doctor said that I might. Unfortunately, within about a decade, I was able to reverse it completely. There's no sign that I have this condition whatsoever. And I'm grateful to the doctors, and grateful for the choices. I made a lot of choices too around this point, even being around people who were very knowledgeable in this area around prevention, kind of holistically minded, managing stress levels, and all of that really helped a lot. And going back to compound growth, 1% progress adds up a lot. People overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in a decade. In a decade, I was able to reverse a condition that I was told was completely degenerative. And I proved that the naysayers, the doctors, that it could be reversed. And I'm here with 2 young kids to live life now without having anything of that sort stop me anymore.
Oh, that's such an incredible story. I want to ask you because I know people talk about this a lot, but you have all these people saying, this is your path. This is it. There's many people that stops them in their tracks, right? There's some people that they're like, okay, this is it. And they accept it as is. There's some people that go, okay, I understand that. And I still want to try and navigate this space to continue to improve in some fashion. And then there's people that say, I'm not going to accept that. And I'm going to do everything I can to change that. So can you tell us a little bit about that thought process for you and what it was inside of you that was like, I'm not accepting this. I want to prevent this from happening. And I believe I can reverse this. Like, what was that like for you to go from, hey, this is all you're going to get to, I'm not accepting that and I'm going to do something different.
So I did be honest. I did wallow in it for a little bit of time. And there's part of my life where I basically said, okay, well, if this is going to happen, I'm going to take some risks in life and do things that scare me. And I did. I basically made some career shifts for myself that had me think very differently. I was doing things that I was not doing before. I was studying improv, performance. I basically left the corporate world where I was worked for about 5 different Fortune 100 companies to now doing some uncanny things post 9/11 where it got very exploratory in life. And part of it is like, well, what do I have to lose? Right? Like life is short, right? I've seen my parents get sick and deal with what they did. Life is short. Let me explore opportunities, avenues, because life is short. There's no promise for tomorrow. So there's probably a phase of that where I was a bit of a victim too as well. I mean, 9/11 happened. I lived next to the trade centers. I was a bit of a victim for some time, but not extensively. I think I was able to get myself out of it. And part of it was just a matter of being in the right peer groups. I went to a church community. So I was part of a community of people who were just very strong-minded, positive-minded, having faith. I come from a family, my dad's side, especially, they meet for the longest time. They're meeting monthly. They're very supportive, encouraging, very faith-oriented too as well. So I had those people around my life too. So I found proximity to people had me get out of my own funk and had me stop being a victim and really being a cause in life. And I believe in life, we can either be a cause or be a victim. Cause versus effect, right? Be an effect or be a cause. When we're a cause, magical things happen because we're able to do the research, to show up, be around people who propel us forward, make better choices. Those choices add up over time. We can do a lot over the course of a decade. When we're an effect, we're living in nostalgia, worrying about the past, comparing ourselves to others, maybe hating ourselves, not being able to look in the mirror. I've gone through those phases. I've gone through both sides of that. It was just a lot more fun and productive to be on the side where I'm at cause. It's a lot more fun being on that side because I'm rising and the people around me are rising too as well. And what comes to mind as far as that goes, I think we all deal with challenges. We all have breakdowns. I almost went bankrupt at one point in my life. Some people have to hit rock bottom. So it's a whole big part of the whole 12-step program is hitting rock bottom before they awaken up. For me, I just had enough feedback around me from people who I loved, who inspired me and pushed me to get out of my own way, remind me how great I was. Part of what I do in my business with Success Circles is just that. I build accountability structures where people remind each other how great they are, where there's no choice other than to rise up each day, every morning, win the day. So I started building frameworks at a young age, started building frameworks 20 some years ago to help people rise. I think my dad at some point as a child, one gift he gave me is he encouraged me the idea that anything you want to live into in life or have in life, you have to find a way to give it away. Right. So, or teach others. The more we teach others, we can become better at it. So having had that gift, right, that nugget of wisdom at a young age helped me make better choices, post-college, adulthood, when sometimes life sent me a barrel of onions. Sports, that's what comes to mind.
I think it's important that people hear a couple points that you mentioned, and I can only hear the negative thoughts in their head, and only because this is something I used to say to myself back in the day when I would listen to things like this. You say, I had family around, I got into community, I surrounded myself with the people that were positive thinking, and it helped pull me out of. And what I immediately hear is, I don't have that. I don't have that. I don't have anyone that supports me. I don't have people around me. I don't have any of that. When people don't have that in their family or in their current environment, what would you suggest they do to help them find that kind of a community to help them continue shifting forward?
Well, if we're born in the US or Canada, or even South America for that matter, I think I really get to consider we've all won the lottery. That's one thing we have to come to realize. And some people, that may not be an immediate point of access for everyone because of the situation and environment we live in and so forth, each person lives in. What I'd say is that there's always an opportunity to make choices that are in alignment with our environment, creating a better environment. I believe that environment is stronger than willpower. There's a famous quote that aligns with that. There are books out there called Willpower Doesn't Work. It's about shifting an environment, creating a peer group. Those people are available, whether it's a meetup group, whether it's tapping into a portal, a forum online, where there you have got great people being part of a mastermind. You and I are part of a mastermind that meets once a week, as an example. It's finding whatever way possible to access those people. But I think a big part of it is this connect with the pain. It is useful to realize like the pain, because if we sink in this pain for too much time, things will atrophy and things can get worse if we keep going down that path, being around the people who may not support us, empower us. It's important. And for me, that came out of journaling. Before I even started creating these peer groups, I started journaling each day and started realizing that, well, if things go down this path in 10, 20 years, I might not have much, I might not have much to show for this. There may be no legacy, and, I'll be stuck watching Netflix the rest of my life and not really making much progress, which a lot of people do. They kind of victims to the environment. I think it's also useful to realize about 20 some years ago, I studied hypnosis. You mentioned before, my voice is very calming, right? When I left the corporate world, a lot of people gave me that feedback. I started exploring that path. So I studied hypnosis. I got certified in hypnosis, NLP, timeline therapy, a bunch of cool things that at the time, particularly because people told me that my voice was so resonant that it would be easy to learn those things. But one thing I learned around that is that we're all being hypnotized in life. And if you see something 7 or 8 times, if you have some inclination toward buying that Diet Pepsi or going to the store, if you see it that many times over the course of a few hours or a day, we get hypnotized to do that. And it's just realizing that we can be hypnotized by the media, by watching Netflix shows, product placements, walking outdoors, or by people in our environment, those naysayers. We can be hypnotized by those people, or we can choose to hypnotize ourselves toward creating a future that excites us, where we're able to create more impact in the world. We're able to do better things, serve people, serve our children, generational wealth, generational impact. So I'm choosing to hypnotize myself. That's a choice that I've made. And what I offer the audience here is to realize that we're all being hypnotized at all points. And it's just our choice whether to break out of that daze or to stay in it. Like the whole idea of the Matrix, the movie that came out in 99, the red pill or the blue pill. We can take one pill and watch Netflix and hang out and go to fast food restaurants and be around naysayers. And that could be a comfortable place to be for some people. And, it's no judgment, but if that's where someone wants to be, then it's fine. I could have been that path too as well. Or we could go through life with a position where we're creating impact, minimizing our footprint on this planet, adding value. And that's where I choose to be. I think when we realize that we have choice in all of this, we can be cause in the matter of our lives, cause in the matter of really making progress. Knowing that as we do that, when we're cause, lots of opportunity will come our way. The upside of that is much bigger than the upside of doing the other course, right? And a lot of that is just simply being in proximity to people that are around us, making choices. The internet's it's a useful thing because there are people that we can access. At the same time, the internet can be a dangerous thing with social media because people can grow up in the midst of that and start comparing themselves to the outside world and get stuck in the comparison versus actually producing, being an executive producer of our lives. They become executive consumers or consuming things versus producing things. I'd rather produce things than consume things. That's my choice, and everyone has choice in the matter.
I think you bring up a good point too with the choice piece, or, the red pill, blue pill kind of thing. And I think of it kind of like living on cruise control. We get in a car and we start driving and we don't know how we got where we went, but we know that's where we're supposed to go. And we don't remember half the drive. And there's, I don't remember who it was, but they were saying it's actually because you're falling into some type of hypnotic state because it's so routine. Your brain doesn't even have to think about it. So it checks out and goes on its own little dream world, which is a little scary to think about. Or, we get in a car to go somewhere and part of the trip is going towards somewhere we go often. And so instead of at a certain point turning off somewhere else, we naturally go this way. Oh, dang it, I'm not going there. You have to turn around and go back. And it's that self-awareness.
Yes.
That we tend to avoid because we don't want to get into the depth of it, right? We like to just stay on the surface and not really deal with our stuff. And it's easier to point out everybody else and be very externally aware. And what I found working with my clients over the years is when it does come to, oh, I know this is my problem. And because I work with entrepreneurs, all their problems are business problems. That's what they think, right? They come to me and they're like, this is the problem I'm having. And we get into the conversation and it's like, that's an internal issue. And when you hit that nerve, when you touch on something that they have buried so deep or they've chosen to not acknowledge, they will do one of two things. They will go all in and they'll be willing to work with you and dig into all of that so that they can move themselves and their business forward, or they're out. And I think it's the same thing in our everyday life. We're going through all the things, and as soon as someone or something hits a nerve, we lash out, we get angry, we have all these things, and then we'll go, oh, I guess I could have handled that so much better. But it's because we haven't practiced self-control.
Yes.
Right? We haven't practiced and made ourselves grab hold of those emotions and stop doing that we don't realize how we're actually also doing it in business. And so how we overcome, this is my personal perspective, how we work towards overcoming challenges in our everyday life is how we will work towards overcoming challenges in business. And people will say, oh, but I do so much better in this area than I do this area overcoming. Yeah. Because I overcome things in business way easier than I overcome things in my personal life because it's so much deeper. But if I really connect with the issue in business and realize where that root is coming from, if I'm not growing in my life, in myself, I'm going to debilitate the growth of my business as well.
Very well said, Pina. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything's holistically connected. You mentioned driving a car. There's a spoke on that car, 4 wheels, and there's that whole metaphor of each spoke of the wheel connects with a different area of life. One area of life is falling short. It affects everything else. It's often useful, as you mentioned, because you got to dig deep what the issue is, what the core issue is. It often shows up in other areas of life too, as well. And it's particularly our clients and what it takes to scale a business. It could be with our families, our children. Like life is a reflection of our perception of how we see ourselves or how we see what's possible. The whole idea of a ceiling over ourselves. Is it a glass ceiling? Is it a real ceiling? Is there no ceiling? What would happen if we took the lid off?
That's a really good question. That'll give people a lot to think about. So I want to ask you, when it comes to business, because you said you haven't always been an entrepreneur, you had to learn how to be an entrepreneur, and you worked with these Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies. What are some of the things around overcoming your heart condition and shifting your life into recovering from what they said was going to be the end all be all of your life? What are some of the things you learned about yourself in that scenario that helped and supported you in shifting into this entrepreneurial space and growing your businesses the way you have?
Great question. Great question. I often don't think about this often particularly because I don't identify myself anymore as somebody with a heart condition. I've achieved that, but
you've overcome that.
I've overcome it. I've overcome that. And there are a few things I embrace. So on my journey towards like being healthier, I mentioned before, when I was high school and college, I had these fainting spells. I learned how to be an athlete. I treat my clients as all being athletes. We're all athletes in this playing field of life. In my business, we have huddles. The huddles are one-on-one. Every sporting event has a huddle at the start of the game. Strategize to win, reflect on the previous game, get feedback. How can I be better today? So I really do bring that game philosophy into everything I do these days, because I believe that when we embrace life as being a game or a dance, whether it be a sport or a dance, as I hit the pillow at nighttime with my wife or my son, my 4-year-old son next to me, the game is over and a new game is about to begin. And that breakthrough thinking has allowed me to really create progress faster than I ever had before. I only realized this maybe like 7, 8 years ago, the depth of gamification. Our tagline for Success Circle in business is dare to play a bigger game, realizing that every day is a game or a dance, and we can play a bigger game if we choose to. With my heart condition, when I was able to prove to myself, so I was seeing my mom's cardiologist, Dr. Alan Gass. He was my cardiologist for 7 years. At some point in 2002, after I ran the marathon, my first marathon, when they did exercise stress tests on me, they basically told me that what I was doing seemed impossible, because the results showed that my left ventricle was pumping more effectively, was smaller in size, ejection fraction, all these things that were going into it. That's all I needed to know. After that point, I basically took it on myself to keep following the protocol and not seeing a cardiologist, but following a protocol myself, knowing that I was getting better. And then in about 7 years, my wife, who's a physician, and I saw that same doctor. He showcased that I'd completely eradicated that condition and no longer had any symptoms about the condition, or, my heart was functioning fully. This always points to me that having small wins over time adds up. For me, one of those wins is running a marathon, running a smaller race before that. All those wins added up to taking green tea, how I felt. And eventually, I cured a number of things with that. Not only was it the heart condition, but I also cured myself of allergies. All these other things started improving. But I believe in business, things operate the same way as well. Also, if we're willing to measure these small wins in Success Circles, the community I lead, we're all about celebrating wins. We have multiple calls throughout the week. We call them bragging calls, or we call them a weekend celebration call. We review, reflect on the week. It's very valuable. It's very valuable to celebrate progress. And that's something that really was helpful for me in my journey of my heart condition and everything else I've learned how to do over time, learning how to swim, being a better speaker, getting rid of a stutter, a multitude of things that I did over time. And business runs the same way as well also, but getting the right feedback is very useful, particularly people who see you as better, who expect to be better. There's this idea that we rise to the quality of expectations of our peer group. Before you and I talk about our environment, like walking into an environment and being a certain way with certain people. So in business, what's helped me scale to another level is being around people who scare me, who are playing at a level where they're doing 7-8 figures a year, where they expect me to be better and bigger. I had a meeting with a colleague of mine. This probably does about 8 figures in his business for lunch several weeks ago. And at that meeting, he had a bit of disappointment in me with the numbers that I had in my business. And it was in that disappointment that I was focusing afterwards for a short amount of time that had me step up in a lot of ways, because he expected me to be better and bigger than I thought I was. And that's what I've done. I think that's one of the greatest hacks in life, ways of doing things, growing. That's mastermind principle. Proximity is power. Continually being with people who invite us to be better, where we feel a little scared at times. And it's not that difficult. And it's, with the virtual world, there's access to that as well also. But it's also a matter of measuring. There's this law called Pearson's law. That which is measured consistently grows exponentially. So I believe if we willing to measure the things that matter to ourselves in our lives, those things will grow. After this meeting, I'm meeting with my project manager, who's an agile coach. We go through KPIs, we go through critical drivers, things that align with my business. Meeting with him once a week gives me a chance to measure that. And if I didn't, then I might get comfortable, or I might just forget what the bigger vision is, what the bigger why is. He holds me accountable to measure those things in a fun way too as well. The last thing I'll say around this is play is a really integral part of making all of this sustainable. Whether you see each day as being a dance or a game, because it's a game or a dance, the more we play, right, the more enjoyment we have. Like the call you and I were before, it's a call where a bunch of us as entrepreneurs get to play together, and it's a very cool thing. I'm all about bringing as much play into every conversation as much as possible, because the more I'm enjoying the process, enjoying the journey, enjoying the connections, enjoying time with my family, they're enjoying as well also. We're playing more together, and it makes the hustle, the hard work, all of it more sustainable, getting to whatever goal, whatever dream we have for ourselves.
I think that's amazing. I could just sit and listen to you talk all day long. I'm like, when someone's talking and you lean in like that. I mean, I do it with most people because I'm like a sponge all the time. And I think if you're listening and you find yourself really leaning in, tuning everything out, the distractions no longer really distractions because you're ignoring everything. And this is in alignment with you. Yeah, all of Joseph's information will be below the YouTube or the podcast, whatever, so you can get connected with him. But I wanted to ask you one last question, because one of the things that I'm hearing from you as you're talking about the marathon and the changes that you made, and over time you did this, I think people tend to misunderstand commitment and consistency. And they hear consistency and think, oh my gosh, I have to do this exactly like this other person, or I have to do this so much, when consistency can be 3 times a week for 10 minutes. Consistency can be 5 times a week for an hour, depending on what that looks like for you with your goals and how fast you want to go. And so I just want to point that out before I ask this other question, because that can be scary to people. So I want to talk about what you were meaning when you get in proximity with people that scare you. First of all, hearing you talk about training for this marathon and changing all these things, I'm like, yep, I'm out. I'm not I'm not a marathon person. I used to run track and I ran the 2 miles, and, they never knew if I was ever going to make it to the end. But when you talk about commitment and consistency are very important in overcoming anything. It's not where you can just do something 1 time or 5 times and everything's going to change. You have to truly commit to taking the actions consistently in order to get the results over time. And in order to do that, I think doing things that scare us are important, because if we're always staying inside of our comfort zone, we're never going to be able to do that. But you talked about something that has recently been brought up for me in my own quiet time and journaling, was being in proximity to people that scare you. And a lot of times I think people will invest in coaches and other people to lead them who are so far beyond where they are that it's not even scary, it's terrifying. And then they get into it and they're trying to do and keep up and do the things that these other people are saying. And then they're out because it's so far beyond where they are. So maybe help people understand like what that means, being around people that scare you because it pushes you and they're beyond where you are versus, you want to be around people who are a few steps ahead of you, 5, 10 steps ahead of you, but you don't want to be around people who are 15, 20, 30 steps ahead of you, trying to drive, put you into that space when you're not ready for that. And not being ready for that is not a bad thing. You just have to go through these steps too. And so can you share a little bit with us about, I got to stop moving. My camera does this thing,
Following around, yes.
Right. But out of the podcast, I'll stay on YouTube. But talk to us a little bit about what it means to surround yourself with people that scare you and maybe push you a little bit without overextend, like without committing to being in a circle of people who it's so far beyond you. And how do you recognize the difference?
Yeah, great question. I think there are different levels where people are at as far as how quickly they want to grow. I'm at a place now where I'm putting myself around people who kind of show up a bit differently. And I have my podcast for rulesforsuccess.com. We interview people all the time, playing at a pretty advanced level. And yet, when it comes to having authentic, real conversations with a lot of depth, kind of like we're having here, engaging with someone who's a step or two ahead of ourselves would be the better path. But what I do business-wise, we do this peer-to-peer accountability program. We match people together. The people we match together typically are on the same playing field. We're both athletes in the same playing field. I use a metaphor a lot. For me, that metaphor allows me to live. I mentioned before that I have to be an athlete to eradicate this condition I had. So I use an athlete quite often. But basically the idea is that we get on the court, you're playing with somebody else, who's a accounting partner, a peer coach on a level that's a step or two ahead of us. We're able to model those strategies. There's a bit of humanity that's there too, because we get to hear their challenges, how they deal with crises, challenges themselves. And we get to model those strategies too as well. So I think it's important not to put ourselves in positions where we're with somebody who's levels way beyond us. I don't recommend that if someone's starting out. To be at a place where we can model strategies and be with people who can inspire us to be better and who are willing to kind of help us rise up. The whole idea, we see these images all the time, people climbing the mountain together, right? And they're pulling each other up at all points. And then at some point, as you get to a certain level, it might be wise to upgrade that peer group, upgrade the mastermind group to the next level and the next level. And that's something I've done over the years. I haven't had too much fear around upgrading my peer group every couple of years and being around people who encourage me to be even better. And to a point now where I'm around people who kind of scare me once in a while. And I'll interview them too as well also, because they're playing at a pretty high level. They don't really scare me much anymore. I kind of see them all as peers at this point. Mm-hmm. I think a big part of the human identity is, am I worthy? Am I loved? Am I an imposter? And all these conversations people often have. I have those conversations too for myself too. They ran my life for decades. And you get to a certain point when you see that we're all human, we're all connected, we're all the same, we're all made in the image of God. There's no difference between all of us, and just a matter of adopting new strategies, putting ourselves into a new environment, maybe being disrupted each day, all those things that invite us to be better. It doesn't have to be that difficult. It's just a matter of journaling, which you mentioned you were doing before, Dina, like just noting those things down each day, noting how we feel, knowing if we are a little better than we were the previous day. And then also getting feedback to people too. One thing I used to do years ago is I would interview people and I basically asked them, authentically, how would you describe me to your friends? What's a strength in me that I might not see that you won't want to acknowledge? What's a weakness in me? Like being able to have those deep conversations with people where they're being real and authentic. Well, we're not taking that information negatively. We're just seeing it as feedback. And feedback's very useful, right? Without feedback, the world doesn't move forward. It's just useful. I think more people are afraid of feedback than anything else because they're afraid how that feedback will land for them, their identity. And I truly believe that if we're able to identify ourselves as something bigger and be around people who identify us as even bigger, being bigger and great, even eventually we'll rise to that identity. And there's no choice. And there's no choice other than to reshift who we've been around for years. There's just no choice because the new people are more in alignment of the identity who we're out creating in the world.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's always going to be people, especially familial people, who have been in your life a long time, who they saw you the way they saw you. They have their perspective. And no matter what you do and how you grow, they're never going to see you any different.
Exactly. Yes.
And so it's important to remember, yes, where we come from and what we've overcome and the lessons that we've learned along the way. And growing forward, it's important for us to remember that we don't have to fall back into those patterns because other people still see us where we were 3, 5, 10 years ago. Like we have to choose to free ourselves from that and understand that that's who we used to be. And not only do we want people to see our growth, we have to allow ourselves to see our own growth and accept that as we've grown and honor that so that we can keep growing forward. Because how we see ourselves, and if we project how we see ourselves onto others, or we let others dictate how they see us, and so we act in that way, it really limits so many things in our life. It limits how we can grow. It limits how we can impact others. It limits our beliefs. It limits our growth in our business and our faith and all the things. So I think it's so good. Such a great conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing your time with us and sharing your story. It's such a powerful story. And I know there will be many people who get so much out of this. So like I said before, if you're interested in getting connected with Joseph, you can find all his information below. Click the link, get connected in whatever way works best for you. And if you align with him and you're like, oh my gosh, I really need what he's offering, you can find all that information in the link as well. And I know he would just love to hear from you. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I really do. Like, this has been such an amazing conversation.
Thank you, Deanna. I really enjoyed it. I'm all about, I think every podcast, every video, everything put out there generationally can impact people. One day my kids may come back and, who was their dad like, and I pray that I'll have the next 50, 60, 70 years with them and beyond. But, we never know. Nothing's ever promised to us. And what I realize is that these interviews, these conversations, they can live forever if we choose to. And everything we want in life is a conversation. It's a matter of sharing these conversations with people who can support us, hold us accountable to these conversations and beyond.
That's so true. And I think it's so great to be able to look back at some of the conversations that we've had and be like, oh, I really said that like 10 years ago.
Exactly.
You can see your own growth, and you can see the shifts in your business and the shift in yourself and all the things in all the conversations that we have. So I think it's a great thing for us to, every once in a while, when we see, memories come up, or we just want to, maybe we're having a rough day and we want to remind ourselves of how much we've grown. It's a good thing to go back to some of those conversations and go, oh my gosh, yes, I'm so, I'm okay. I'm really okay.
Exactly. Sometimes I'm not too big into nostalgia. Sometimes it's good to revisit those experiences. I'll say one thing I did for my kids. I did for my nephew and my niece too, as well, when they're born. My niece is now 17, 18 this year, because I created a Gmail account for them. My nephew and my niece, my kids too, within the first couple of weeks they're born. And I've sent them pictures, images, videos, just to remind them how extraordinary they are. Like how much I love them. And with my kids, taking tens of thousands of photos at this point, and we tag them in photos. They're not old enough to have an email account yet, but when they grow up, when they turn with, say, 12, 13 years old or 10, whenever we choose, they have a whole collection of wealth they'll have access to at that point of reminders of how loved they were, experiences. And because people forget, people go unconscious to those moments where they were loved. I certainly did. I think growing up, the first 6 years of my life, I might have a total of 8 pictures of myself being a child. And we forget it all. And then it takes people reminding us how great we were in those experiences. And so I made a choice with my kids and my nephew, my niece, to ensure that they have a wealth of experiences and memories that they can remind themselves of ongoingly forever. And, that's
the good thing. That's before my time with kids, way back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the 90s, that was definitely not the thing when
there were no digital cameras back then, right? Back in the 90s, there were very few.
I was still using a regular film camera back then. That was still I think the car phone was a thing. I know my stepdad had a car phone, and it was a very big block thing that, was only as needed and in case of an emergency. And, I remember when cell phones became a thing, and it was like, okay, you have to be middle school age before you have a phone.
Right.
That it was only because the place we lived and the safety concerns, and we were kind of relieved to have that option, but not the whole, oh, here's an email address for, one of my cousins was like, oh, I have an email address for my daughters. And I'm like, what do I send them? And what I would send them, they live half across the country and I don't ever see them and I don't know what to say. But I think about it and go, what you said, I was like, that would have been a great way for me to send things to my kids. Cause sometimes I'll write notes to them in my journal, or I'll make a note on my notes in my phone of things that I just want to remember, or, how I'm proud of them. And I think if I would have done something like that back then, I was like, would I really have kept up with that? Because I couldn't even keep up with, if you have 5 kids, there's a lot to keep up with.
Yes.
But no, I think it's a great idea.
Especially when you're a young parent, sometimes those things are on mind, and
No.
you're still in the whole self-discovery thing came to me, probably my late 20s or so. The value of it and journaling. And I'm grateful that 20 years of journaling now ever since. But it's just seeing the decisions people make in life based on thoughts, on all of that. It's just easy things to pull out a picture and take a photo and do something unique and fun, and have an experience. Times you went traveling with the restaurant. When we went to Cancun last December, I remember the last day of our trip. While the kids are sleeping, my wife is taking a shower. I pull out my phone, and I basically recorded like 8 minutes of everything. Just being outdoors, the kids sleeping, just the experience, the joy they had, the peace they had, the extra sleep we got on that trip, because we often get less sleep with everything else going on. But I captured that as a means to, well, this is something I can recreate again easily if I choose to. Muscle memory, that they can have that sort of sense of peace, that sense of safety net whenever we choose to create that for them. And it might be another investment, it might be another trip in the next 6-7 months. For me, that's meaningful, versus just watching Netflix and doing other things are kind of fun once in a while, but it's meaningful to be able to capture those moments.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you again so much for your time. It was so great chatting with you and being able to have this time with you, and
getting to know you better, right? After the time in the 10s group. How long have you been in the 10s group with Michael? Yeah.
2 months.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, not very. He did an event. He was networking an event for someone, and I attended the event. And we got chatting during the event, and he's like, oh, come to one of my connection calls. So I went to a connection call. He's like, can I connect with, he's like, I want to connect with you one-on-one. I was like, okay. He's like, hey, come to this group with me after that call. I was like, okay, I don't know what's happening. I'm just going with the flow.
Awesome.
It's right. And I was like, I'm just going to keep going and saying yes, because I just felt like this is a great space to be. And, there's so many people in our 10 group have opted to come in and share their stories on my podcast. And it's so funny because Janine and I live right down the road from each other. She's like, oh, it's over.
Wow.
And when I first jumped into the 10 group.
Did you know that?
No. We jumped in the 10 group and she looked real familiar. And then I hear her start talking. She sounds so familiar and I could not place her anywhere. And then one day she mentioned like all these radio shows that she broadcast. Well, it's the area I grew up in. Well, when we moved to Colorado, this is the area that, middle school, high school, all the things. And back then everything was radio.
Right.
Radio or TV.
Yeah.
We didn't have the social media thing going on. So
Nice.
I was like, oh my gosh, I know I've heard you on who knows how many radio.
Wow.
So it was so interesting.
She certainly has a radio presence. She speaks in sound bites. Somebody who speaks in sound bites, you can kind of tell they're used to this whole thing where they pause every so often because that's just how radio works, speaking sound bites. She certainly has. It's very, very cool to hear her thought as well.
When we did our podcast, before we actually got started, we were having a conversation, goes, so let's talk about that. And she jumps into this whole segment around it. It's like, I just love it. So, but yeah, it's been amazing. The 10 group has been fantastic. And I'm loving, I pivoted my business this year. So I went from 5 figures last year to 0. And so you were talking about that imposter syndrome. And I was like, that's still in that space because I went back to 0. But that doesn't mean that I lost any of my knowledge or that I'm starting over. It just means this is a new season that I'm in and having support in that space. And just, I think because I'm pivoting, I'm like, I never know what to ask, what to give, what to do. And I'm just like, I'm soaking it all in and offering whatever support I can when I can around the things that I understand and that I know in business. And it's just a very interesting space because when you're talking about being around people that scare you, that's this space for me. And there's so much grace and there's so much kindness and compassion and desire to help people in that space. That there are spaces that I'm a part of that doesn't even come close. And it's been an incredible experience. So yeah, there's a lot of people from the 10 group that are on my podcast this year. So
amazing.
Yeah.
We can all share that in common, having a conversation with you. And it's really awesome.
Yeah.
It's definitely a great community. I love that you were neighbors with Janine. That's really great. And
yeah.
We learn from each other. I'm learning constantly from the group. It's a great community. It's like home, right?
Yeah, it is. And Chris Felton is right in between us too. He's in the next town over from me.
Okay. Chris is launching his book this week or this time. And I had him on my podcast, rulesforsuccess.com. I think we launched it today, that episode. We put it up today.
Awesome.
Great guy.
Main launches next Wednesday.
His main launch is next Wednesday. Got it.
Yeah, for my podcast. His podcast on mine will be next Wednesday because I wanted to make sure it happened before his book launch happened. And so when I talked about that.
Yes.
Was, that it would launch before his book launch. And so I'm planning on going to Denver for his launch. So we'll see as long as that all works out.
That's amazing. You can be there supporting. That's really great.
Yeah, it'd be really awesome. So
what's your book going to be on one day?
My book?
Yeah. What will it be out? Oh, you already have it.
Well, I have a couple. Actually, I can find them. So I wrote a book in 2017 and it was just my story, but I wanted it to be something that people would actually use and do something with. And so in it, there's places for people to actually take action and answer questions. And it's called It's Time to Change, How to Overcome Your Past So You Can Live Your Purpose. And I pulled it from publication.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Ago, because I realized something just was off with it. And so I'm actually going to my goal this year, starting May, is to start working on my book that's going to happen. I was encouraged by a mentor of mine to actually take my put down the plates methodology and how I help entrepreneurs step out of survival mode and really set their business up for growth. So when they get to that growth stage, all the foundational work is done. He encouraged me to write a book around that. But I know I really need to write my story also. So I'm kind of not really sure what I'm going to do this year. And then I have a journal that's on Amazon. It's the You Matter journal. That's a picture that I took here of Colorado.
Love it.
But I've always encourage people to write their story. This is where you're going to create what's coming. Yes, write gone on, but don't let your journal be the place that you just complain. It's got to be the place that you create. So I have a few people who are like, I need more journals. This is the one I'm using to write my book. And I need more journals because I've already done this. And I'm like, great. I think it's not something that's there for moneymaker. It's something to support and encourage people. But yeah. So I'm hoping this year will be the year I start working on my book. I'm not sure if it'll be done this year, but I am going to get back into writing my story and sharing some things with people. So
somebody shared on the Tens group that, forget her name. She was on with Kelly. Yeah. Kelly Sparta. She mentioned, she has a whole compilation of every podcast she's done. I recommend getting her a template. But what was useful for that is we were able to backtrack all their podcasts, and every podcast shows different story experiences. All that can be transcribed very easily. And it's very useful. So there might be some things we forget. Like I don't talk about my heart condition that often, but it would be probably useful in a chapter of book. So potentially transcribing this, having my team transcribe it might be something useful to do as we choose to share. I choose to share about that.
Yeah. That's a great idea. I used to go live on Facebook every day. Before then it was Periscope. And so I have hundreds and hundreds of live videos. So I'm working on a big project where I'm going to be taking those and just pulling content from them.
I love it.
So that I can,
Very smart.
Oh,
I've got to call my coach now.
Your call. Yep. I will let you go, and I will probably see you the next time. I appreciate you too.
I'll see you next time.
Okay, bye.